of any way, shape, or form you can, but these were not. It is a 500-pound bomb that, when it hits the ground, causes a big hole and blows stuff up.
But just a normal bomb.
Yeah, it's kind of a general purpose explosive.
Not like
it's not like a nuke or anything crazy.
No, nothing. Yeah, conventional explosives, but they still.
I mean, obviously, still devastating. But...
Oh yeah, and so they fling. I've heard they can fling shrapnel for like a mile.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about some of the specs on them in a bit, but they do some serious damage.
I just wanted to make sure we were talking like
no nukes, no crazy weapons,
some weird uranium trade or something like that.
No, a dirty bomb.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty apparent here that the U.S. Air Force, as soon as they find everything and they figure out that the Mark 82s aren't there, they start combing the entire area around the crash site.
Oh yeah.
They make a very, very intense. I'm guessing I'm guessing that the kind of search they did was, people on foot, not just circling overhead, because they are using things like ground-penetrating radar within a several-mile perimeter of where the crash happens. There's a lot of little lakes in that area, and so they actually started sending divers into those lakes with the idea that maybe the bombs dropped and they hit the water, and they either were not activated or they just didn't go off because they hit the water and sank, rather than going in nose first. And of course, this search, like I said, it took them 2 weeks to figure out where his plane had gone,
and then snowstorming.
They couldn't get right away, so it takes several weeks to get there. So we're looking at like a month or two later.
Yeah.
Because they went and did an initial search, and then they had to stop because of the weather. And then when they got back there, because obviously the snow melt had happened, the debris field has shifted downhill. So that's why it was kind of tough to figure out where everything was, but they're just looking everywhere because they want to know, where the hell are these bombs?
Yeah, they're not like tiny.
No, they're not at all. They're pretty big.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the Mark 82 is that the pilot has to arm the bomb. It is not as if they are flying around with something that it could just go off at any moment, because that's just foolish.
Oh, hell yeah.
But they were pretty sure that he hadn't armed the bombs, which is probably why they should just be laying somewhere and easily found.
Yeah, it's unlikely because, they knew his approximate flight course, and so I'm sure they flew over it looking for big craters. So that's one way to know that he didn't arm the bomb.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple of things here about it that I said the flight computer on the plane was found, and that would have recorded what he had done with the bombs. It wouldn't have recorded, say, where he would have dropped them, but it would have said where they dropped and were they armed when dropped.
I bet that wasn't the most weather-resistant computer, though.
Oh, it also wasn't very shock-resistant either, because the impact had destroyed it and they couldn't recover any data off of it.
Of course not.
Now, I have read conflicting accounts of this next bit that we're going to talk about here, which is the racks on the wings of the plane. I've seen sources that said that the racks were not disengaged. In other words, think of it as a clamp. Clamp is engaged, it's going to be holding on to it, and disengaged is going to be open. They said those clamps on the struts of the wings were still engaged, so he shouldn't have dropped the bomb. In other words, it's not as if when he drops them, they close again.
Yeah, no, so in other words, I've heard it both ways too, although if you crash with the bombs attached,
they should have ripped free, I would imagine.
The bombs
they
would have
weren't
ripped
right
free,
there.
but also the mounts would have been also seriously ripped and torn off too.
Yeah.
And the accounts that say that he released the bombs before, I've actually found more credible than the other accounts. So
yeah.
I think he released them well before his crash.
And he may very well, and that actually is kind of the end of the story, which actually leaves us with two different mysteries.
Yeah.
One, what did Button commit suicide? Because that's one of the main things you will hear. Why did he fly? What happened? Why was he there? Why did he break formation? And two, what happened to the Mark 82s?
Yeah.
So we have two mysteries, and we're going to start with the first one that I just brought up, which is, did he or did he not actually commit suicide? Because that is the most popular one, and you will see a lot of reporting on it, and you will get a lot of stuff from the U.S. Air Force that seems to indicate that he did intentionally commit suicide by mountain.
Poor Mountain.
Just to clarify, real quick before we jump into this, he was like very talented, right? Like Air Force like knew that he was talented.
Yeah, good
From
pilot.
the get-go. He was a good pilot.
Yeah. They don't let any idiot fly that plane.
Right, but like compared to his peers, was he like way better?
He was a flight instructor for several years, which I would take to indicate that he was skilled.
Really knew his stuff.
And as after that, I couldn't comment on how he ranked among his fellow airmen.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say he's been flying for since he was 17.
He knew how to fly a plane.
Probably was a good pilot.
Probably a good pilot. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so first off, before we even get into the theories, I am going to say reiterate what we said earlier, which is he was considered a straight shooter. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink, and there is nothing that ever came up in his body that ever said that he had any substance abuse issues or that he was drunk at the time or anything crazy like that. So those are easy things to just sweep out of the way initially.
Also, there was also no evidence of hypoxia, right?
I saw thoughts about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I don't believe that was the case. First sub-theory inside of suicide is the reason was family objections. From all of the accounts that I've read, Button was excited about the fact that he was going to get to transfer and go to Europe. He was happy where he was, and everybody seemed to think that he was in good shape. But according to this theory, he was actually semi-secretly struggling with his family's religious beliefs. His mother and father were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they had been in that religion they'd converted about 20 years prior to that. Now, officially, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't serve in the military. Pacifists. They don't believe in doing that. It's against their beliefs. And based on his age and how far back they had converted, I get the feeling that the family converted when he was a kid. Say 10, 12, somewhere in that age.
Setting his belief system.
And I don't believe that he actually became a member of the church, which would explain why he went into the Air Force.
Well, but wasn't his dad also in the military?
A World War II and Vietnam era pilot, yes, but that was prior to the conversion. So he did that, and he served his military career before finding his faith. According to this, the thing is that his mother, because of their religious beliefs, she was not happy about him being in the military, and she tried to convince him to leave the military on a very regular basis. In some families, that is known as nagging mom.
Well, yeah.
I don't know how these conversations went, but I get the feeling that sometimes they weren't always the happiest affairs.
But, I can think of alternatives to suicide if you got that issue. Number one, mom gets your way. Number two, you just don't talk to mom that much.
There's a number of ways around this, but we're going to continue on with it, even though Joe has a simple solution there.
Okay. That's what I would have done.
So, theory goes. Button experiences a crisis of faith when he realizes, as some people have said, he was being trained to kill people, and it was this crisis that made him decide, instead of just simply quitting, to take his own life.
To be fair, it's probably a little more complicated than that.
I'm simplifying this a lot.
Well, I just mean if he did the ROTC program, right? He owed the U.S. government a ton of money if he were to say, hey, I know you guys just paid for me to full ride through 4 years of college, but I'm not saying that he actively owed, but I don't think you can just drop out of the military 2 months out.
Not the way it works. No,
but they don't full ride you. Believe me, I remember guys. I was in college at the same time as this guy.
Yeah.
And I remember the kids in the ROTC program when I was there, and they got a healthy amount, but it wasn't as if the ROTC paid them a full ride, because college kids are unreliable,
right,
and they can't support every one of the little boogers.
Well, okay, so but
he did. He was required to serve a certain amount of time,
and he would have owed them a lot of money that he definitely wouldn't have been. I mean, kids
don't
go into the ROTC because their parents can pay for their college because they're from really well-off families, usually. right? Because they need help paying for it.
Well, sure.
So
There's a percentage, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a little more complicated than like, oh, he could have just quit his job.
Well, no. I mean, nobody's saying he could have quit his job.
Right.
I mean, but his, even, money aside, that's just not the way the military works.
Right.
You sign your papers.
Right.
You're there
You
for
belong to them.
4 years or
Right.
6 years,
But,
whatever.
but there's also the thing called a transfer. You can say, I have an issue. I am now, I've taken on this faith and I cannot fly. And, the military has to have somebody that cleans the bathroom.
Well, he could have gone back to being a flight instructor.
Yeah, he could have done
That's
a
true.
million things.
But now here's the other thing is from what I've heard, he said he really enjoyed blasting away with that 30-millimeter cannon.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
who wouldn't?
well, let's
Yeah.
so that's the quote here.
And that's, I mean,
Here, let's get to that right now. So we're gonna go back to the family, which is the family had visited in March, both his parents, and they said it was a great visit, and he was happy, and there was no problems, there was no disagreements, and he apparently also he kept in touch with the people that he had been renting from when he was stationed in Texas. And he had written them a letter, because this is back in the day when you still wrote real letters and sent them by mail.
yeah, remember letters?
Such an antiquated system. But no. So he sends them a letter. Strangely enough, they received that letter on the 2nd of April, 1997, which is a little weird. But the letter says, actually, Joe, do you mind reading this?
Flying is going fast.
No, in your voice, not in your German voice.
Okay. Quote, flying is going well. I love the A-10. Most everything we do is low level. I'll be dropping. My folks were down for a week just recently, and I took them to the Grand Canyon. Would you believe they had never been there before? Unquote.
So that
Sounds pretty enthusiastic.
That sounds
actually.
like a very excited, happy guy
Yeah.
who's doing what he really likes to do.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't? I mean, you could blow things up and shoot things. I mean,
Yeah. While flying through the air? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Oh yeah, no, believe me, my dad was in the military for years, and he loved the fact that he got to blow stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
I will just add to this theory, the thing that we always say around suicides doesn't mean that he had to have been, I mean, this isn't contingent on him have been, particularly unhappy with that situation. He could have been hiding things. People who appear happy kill themselves all the time.
It's true.
We don't want to belittle that,
No.
but let's talk about some other theories.
Yeah. So that is the end of that theory. So we're going to go to sub-theory 2, which is the jilted lover theory.
I feel like every time we do anything that's like air disappearance or military, or both really together, of military air disappearance, there's always the jilted lover and there's always the next one. They're the two.
Oh, well, what about the naval ones? The naval ones always have it.
Well,
Yeah.
any
What about the UFO ones?
any armed
Half the US
disappearance.
UFO ones have this. Actually, you know what? We should just make this a standard filler for all scripts.
Yeah, do a
Don't-
little
because it's in all of them.
boilerplate,
Actually,
yeah.
don't we just fill out a form anyway?
Oh,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
It's the TPS report. That's the one.
Yeah, not the TSP, the TPS.
No, yeah, it's the TSP TPS.
Yeah.
That's the one we fill out.
It is.
Okay, so no, the jilted lover, according to this theory, when Button joined the Air Force, he had a relationship with another classmate, and according to this reporting, he kind of, sort of asked her to marry him, and she turned him down.
Oh, no.
And that apparently, he took that quite hard, and it took him several years to get over. She apparently called him in Christmas of 1996, and I don't know if they talked or it was just left a message kind of scenario. I don't know.
I may be able to shed some light on this, having dated someone who was in basic training once, which I think is similar to this.
okay.
You can't call them.
Well, they were both in the service.
Oh.
They were both. She was also
She was
in the
also-
program.
I don't
She
know.
was also,
I don't know how that deals with at that point, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get in contact with people who are
Yeah.
in this sort of basic training.
well,
situation.
Well, yeah,
this is well past his basic training.
I'm sorry. In any kind of training situation in the military, it is hard to get a hold of somebody.
Quite
Okay.
possibly. Maybe not now, but maybe back 20 years ago.
No, actually, it's still kind of hard.
It
They
was
cut down
hard
the
for
lines of
me.
communication. They
Yeah.
really kind of...
You don't get to have your cell phone out there in the trenches?
No, it turns out that Google Maps, not so good with the trenches.
Yeah.
Neither is Siri. Okay, so no, what happens here is in 96, apparently she calls. He calls her back on the 1st of April, or calls her. I don't think they'd had contact between Christmas and then. She's unable to talk at that time, though, and she takes his phone number down, and then she calls him back on the 5th or the 6th of April, unaware that he had taken his plane and gone AWOL. According to this theory, after we know this little bit about this lady, the theory goes that he realized that he was in love with her and she wouldn't talk to him, and that coupled with the fact, no joke, this is part of the theory, that he had bought a VCR and a copy of The Bridges of Madison County, that was what pushed him over the edge.
That's so sad. Is that the last movie that poor guy ever saw?
That's the one that he bought with the VHS player. And by the way, this theory, this comes from the psychological autopsy that was done by the U.S. Air Force. And I've never heard of a psychological autopsy before.
Well, I can sort of see that.
Can someone please tell me the plot of Bridges of Madison County?
It is...
Even just the genre?
It is a sad, love not meant to be movie with Clint Eastwood and some other actors who
Meryl Streep,
Meryl Streep,
yeah.
And they want to be, but their lives won't let them. And
I never saw that movie. I never want to.
Oh,
I don't ever want to see.
I think I was forced to watch like 15 minutes once, and then I ran.
Yeah,
I've literally never heard of it, so
no,
there you go.
It's got Clint Eastwood.
You'll be crying for weeks.
I'm a bad girl, I guess.
You are, but seriously to me, I don't want to see Clint Eastwood on the screen without a gun in his hand.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, seriously.
Really?
Although his son, Scott Eastwood, I would see him any day of the week.
All right, you two. Back on topic here. So we're going to move from that silly theory to another silly theory, which is suicide sub-theory 3, gay lover. Yep, this one's always in there as well. And I'm going to say right now, I couldn't substantiate this except for a few places which mentioned a supposed undisclosed U.S. Air Force insider who said that the Air Force had discovered that Craig Button was in the closet.
So this is not one of the Air
gay.
Force's theories, then?
No, this is something that came out and has been out there for a while. Sorry, that was a bad turn of phrase. But no, this was out there for a while, and it's really... There's not a whole lot to this, Joe. Nothing to back it up. Okay.
There's one paragraph, right?
Yeah, it's 1.5 paragraphs, yes. And that's because I padded it with a little bit of history.
Yep.
So the story goes that one of Craig's previous lovers was planning to come forward and disclose their relationship. And today that doesn't seem like it's a big deal.
I'm sorry, I'm air quoting, wouldn't be a big deal.
It wouldn't be a big deal today.
Legally shouldn't be a big deal, but
at the time, this is 97, and in 94, Bill Clinton had signed into effect Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which said that if you were in the closet, you could be a service member, but if you were out of the closet, you could not serve in any branch of the U.S. military. I mean, it's a huge known thing, but that would have meant, according to this law, that means that this person coming forward would have been the end of his military career.
dishonorable discharge, right?
I'm not sure if it'd be dishonorable, John. No, no court martial.
No, not by. I mean, in the days of McCarthy, yeah, that had totally been a court martial, but not at this point. But I think it was a discharge. It definitely wasn't an honorable discharge either. But I don't remember the specifics of how they did it.
Yeah, there's like honorable, general, and dishonorable. And I don't think they're going to waste time on a court martial. Even back in the old days, they just discharge you.
Yeah,
you know,
send you on your way.
No sense wasting time on a trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about gay suicide pact? Have you thought of that?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, I haven't, and we're going to leave that alone because that's not anywhere in here. But you just made it up for fun.
He just pulled it from a different one, you know.
Oh, you're looking at the wrong TPS form. That was on the other one from last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the end of the he committed suicide theory. Let's now move into Craig Button was murdered theory.
Yeah.
Because this one is, this is interesting is how I'm going to put it. There's a gentleman by the name of William W. Warwick IV.
I've read some of his stuff.
I have too. I've read a lot of his stuff actually, and he makes a lot of claims. He has connected this story to some UFO sightings, and he's generally made a big stink on the internet about it. So
Didn't he also try to connect this to like 9/11?
He may have, and I probably just didn't go that far through his stuff.
It's kind of hard to figure out how you could do that, but
he is very creative in his ways. He's a very creative man. So here is what Warwick says. On the 13th of March, 1997, a series of unexplained lights are seen in the night sky over Phoenix. That is what is commonly referred to as the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, famous mystery.
And it is a UFO sighting. It is something that we may talk about in the future, so I'm just going to give the barest, simplest description of the event, which is that stationary lights were seen and described. They were first described as a pair, and then there was a third, and then a fourth light, and then they went out, and then a new set of 3 lights appeared. Supposedly smaller lights were peeling off of them and then coming back to them, and then there was also a triangular formation of lights that were seen in the sky at a different time and a different location of Phoenix. So there's this whole thing, like the whole city is freaking out because they see lights in the sky. That is the simplest version of the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, but I mean, I've read a little bit about the Phoenix Lights, but actually it wasn't like everybody in the city saw these things, right?
No, but a lot of people reported it.
Yeah,
a lot of people did.
I mean, out of the population of Phoenix, really a tiny percentage actually reported it, right?
I can't answer that. I don't know. Joe, I didn't do, but the basest looking into the Phoenix Light, because I was really focused on what this guy's theory was for this.
Yeah.
I didn't want to cover the Phoenix Lights. That way we have it open to someday talk about it there.
Oh, okay. We've already spoiled it. We're gonna
so no spoilers from Joe. But
Yeah.
I will, because here's what the U.S. Air Force says. They said that they actually had a set of A-10s flying a nighttime mission in the area at that time, and they're responsible for the stationary lights because what was happening is they were on a nighttime practice bombing run, but rather than dropping munitions, or live munitions even more so, what they were doing instead is they were dropping flares.
Parachute flares.
To me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about flares from a far distance on a parachute floating through the sky, you could see how people would say, oh, well, that's it's a stationary set of lights. That's really strange. There's 2, now there's 3, now there's 4.
Totally.
So this is the Air Force's description of the events. Warwick claims that it is a complete and total cover story and that the lights really are UFOs and that the U.S. Air Force is covering, for some reason, for the ETs that were there.
Because of course they are.
Because, of
That's
course,
just what
they
they
are.
do.
That's
yeah.
literally what the U.S. Air Force does.
And Button, he was possibly a member of the flight crew that was covering or chasing